This is Mari Robeson of Love Lulu Creative, a podcast that supports and celebrates artists and creative entrepreneurs while giving back to the community in a unique and meaningful way. This is episode number 23. I don't know about you guys. I'm really excited about that. That's a lot of episodes with some really amazing artists and creatives. So I'm so happy to be able to introduce to you another amazing artist today. Her name is Laurie Buck. And, there's a saying that August is the Sunday of summer. And I really feel like something about Laurie's work just makes me think of summer. And it's so colorful that her florals are just bursting off her canvas. And it's just joyful and inspiring and lovely. And so is she. So I know you guys are really going to like this episode, especially if you are someone who is looking to pursue the arts and you didn't go to college and get an MFA and do all of those traditional things. She has a really interesting story about her journey of how she evolved into her art career, and it's really good. I really like how she shares this, and it's true for anybody. So anybody can be an artist if they really find that they're passionate about it. So listen to this one. You're gonna really like it. Also, if you are liking these episodes, it would be super helpful to subscribe to my channel. It helps me to spread the word and this mission of supporting the arts. And if it's not something you want to subscribe to, maybe you can share it with someone that is a creative that would really benefit from all of the wonderful advice that all of these artists are sharing. And I would also deeply appreciate it. It kind of lights me up a little bit inside every time I see that. And it kind of gives me that confirmation to keep doing this work of supporting these artists. So please share and subscribe. That's very much appreciated by me. Stay tuned now for another good one, guys. Another wonderful episode with a very beautiful and very talented Laurie Buck. Hi, Laurie. It's great to have you on the show today. I'm super excited to get to know you a little bit more because I love your work. It's gorgeous and it makes me happy every time I look at it. So I'm excited to get to know the artist behind all the beautiful florals that I'm seeing on your lovely, lovely Instagram feed. So nice to have you here.
Thank you so much, Mari, for having me. I am honored. Followed your work. Your work is beautiful. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
We are both color lovers, which is, I think, why I was drawn to you so much. And your style is something I could never, ever recreate. So I'm always fascinated by, hey, do you work in oil paints?
No, acrylics.
Oh, you work in acrylics and you get that kind of look. Do you wear like is it like a heavy body acrylic paints?
Well, I'm playing around with open acrylics right now, but I have used really heavy. I'm always experimenting.
I know.
But I've got a lot to learn still.
Well, everybody does. It's never ending, which is great. That's why we love it so much. Okay, so let's talk about you. You are you're in Greenville, South Carolina, but where you didn't grow up there, you were saying?
No, I grew up in the upstate of South Carolina. I'm sorry, let me start again. I grew up in the panhandle of Florida, so in the northern part of Florida, still in the South, but not here in the upstate. But here in the upstate, we have such a wonderful, vibrant, artistic community. So I am really grateful for that because that, is really awesome for an artist. We a lot of times work by ourselves. So to be surrounded by such a great community, it really means a lot.
I totally agree with you. And I really admire that. And it's funny, I'm going to go on a little tangent, but I also noticed that artists from different regions, like the colors are different and the vibe is just different of the artwork, which is, I don't know why I went off on that tangent, but I was thinking about you and some other artists in that area and we love colors so much, but I'm out here in California, so that doesn't make sense. But I need to move there. So tell me a little bit about your background. Did you always want to be an artist?
I wasn't a very artistic child. I don't think I was very artistic. My parents are not artistic. I actually was a high school English teacher. I loved reading and words, and I wasn't really a creative writer. I didn't feel like I had that gifting to write poetry or stories or anything like that, but I felt like I loved analyzing and doing expository writing and stuff like that. But after my children were born, I stopped. And I was just at home with them, just being a housewife. And I remember meeting a friend at a wedding, and she was like, I'm learning about this weird thing, and I just want to tell you about it. It's classical education. And I thought, okay, that's weird. I don't really understand it. But she said, I'm going to start this thing here in our area. And it's where when children are young and they have this amazing ability to memorize, instead of just teaching them shape and colors and numbers, why don't we teach them things that they would normally learn in junior high and high school, so that when they get to junior high school, they can actually debate the ethics of some of these things instead of just learning them. And I thought, oh, that sounds interesting, maybe. So anyway, I ended up helping her start that co-op. And I was teaching in a little class, and one of the components was art. And I thought, oh no, not good. I do not know how to do this. And so I had to demonstrate the art component of the class, and we would study different artists and then do a project based on some of their work. And I remember there was a part where we had to draw a room with perspective, and I thought, oh no, this is not going to end well. But I had that book. I don't know if you're familiar, Drawing with Children by Mona Brooks. Do you know? I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but she goes by step, showing you how to do something like that, a drawing with perspective. And I remember drawing it and thinking, oh my goodness, it looks like a room with perspective. And I thought, oh, well, maybe it's actually a skill and not just something you're born with, Because I remember when I was little, I thought, when I wanted to draw, my drawings were awesome. And so I just thought, well, I'm not one of those kids. I immediately associated failure with inability.
Aww.
Yeah, I don't know if any other people I think that happens also in math classes. Kids struggle.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I'm not a math person,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, with your work with young artists, a lot of times artists say, I'm not a numbers person, so I can't, market my work, or I can't run it as a small business, when really it may just take a little bit of work. It may take some struggle in those early years. But anyway, so
that's kind of interesting, because you're talking about these early on limiting beliefs that we are told, either maybe by a teacher or a parent or ourselves, or comparing ourselves to others, and it is just a limiting belief. It doesn't mean that it's true. Yeah. So that's just interesting that you bring that up. I appreciate that. That's very honest.
I'm always saying that to my kids, about the things that they think they're not good at. They don't think they're good at math or swimming or whatever. And I say, well, you weren't good at walking.
Exactly.
Yourself at one time. It was the practice, the consistency. But anyway, 3 or 4 years later, I was helping my older child go through a difficult time. And she loved to draw, like a lot of kids do. And so I felt like she needed some one-on-one time with me. So each week we would pull up a YouTube video, and we would study how to draw an eye or mouth or different parts of the face. And it was great because, I don't know, Mari, as a mom, a lot of times we seem to our kids probably that we know everything, like we know how to work before they do, and we know how to ride a bike before they do. And so they don't see us failing. And I think that is a really good thing to do as a parent. Learn something together,
I love that.
We did that, and we laughed at each other's drawings because mine were really bad a lot of times.
Very hard to believe, but okay.
But I remember after weeks of doing this, we decided just to get a magazine and to draw a face, just from the ad. So we pulled up, or we found an ad. I think it was with Kate Winslet or someone like that. And I remember drawing it and thinking, number one, it looks like a human person, which was good. And second, it looked like her. It looked like the person I was trying to draw. And it was that big aha moment for me that probably had been building subconsciously, but that it wasn't that I couldn't draw. It was that I wasn't willing to look stupid and fail as a younger student, a younger person, and get over that initial setback. And, I really could draw, but it's just the practice. And like we're going back to that thing of limiting beliefs, like, I believed that. And so I tell my kids, you're going to get out of school, out of college, out of high school, and you're probably going to try something and you think it's going to be the job, and it may not. And that's okay. I mean, you think about the founders of Airbnb or Uber, they heard no a lot. They heard a lot of people rejected those initial ideas. That didn't mean they were not going to succeed eventually. One of my kids had a lot of trouble reading. And I remember thinking as a young mom, I'm a failure. I just didn't help that child enough or whatever, instead of thinking that, we can grow as humans. That's the cool thing. That I don't know if you're familiar with, there's a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck that has popularized the idea of growth, the growth mindset, that, you can grow as a human being, and that initial failure doesn't define you. So I feel like I'm talking a lot, not giving you.
Well, I am interviewing you. I know. And I really love what you're saying. And I think it's very, very helpful to a lot of people who try, and it's, it's true. Like, people will look, I'll get a comment like, oh my gosh, you can just draw that like that. It's like, but I've been doing this for decades. I better be able to draw. I know, but as many times as I've, drawn a room or something for a client. So it's not, I didn't start out that way either. And everybody, there is a big learning curve. I think it's coupling it though with what you're passionate about. So usually we tend to be very good at things that we are really passionate about and we love to do. And it's when we start to feel a little bit of taste of success in it is when it kind of starts to get momentum. But I love all of that you, with your daughter, and like showing your vulnerability, and that it takes courage to be an artist, because it does. Even if you've done it for years and years, and when you stare at that blank canvas, you're going, okay, hope this works out.
Yes, it never ends. Never.
Yeah. I think that's what's so fun about it, though, is that if it was easy all the time, it wouldn't be so satisfying. Right?
Yeah, I think my daughter had a violin teacher years ago, and she used to say, violin is not about violin, it's about life. And I think that's similar with art. We're always, the lesson about perseverance has been so huge for me with painting. Sometimes I'll get a painting to a place and I'll think, it's hopeless, it's awful, but I'm willing to like push a little bit past that. Sometimes those are my favorites,
Oh, it's so true. And, I've taught dance forever, and I'd always look at those students that would be really amazing technicians. Like, they can learn how to do a beautiful forte turn, beautiful pirouettes, but it's the ones who've had a little bit of heartache and a little bit of a rough go that can really emote and tell a story when they're dancing. And I'll be like watching these young dancers, and I'm like, she'll be great once she gets her heart broken once or twice. You've got to bring all of it to the story, to the art. It's not just technically, and it's true. You do have to technically learn how to draw. I mean, that's part of it. If you want to learn how to draw a face, there's all kinds of systems proven to show you how to draw a face, but it's what's inside that depth that makes it something special to look at.
Exactly. Yes.
Anyway, so much philosophical talk for 9:00 in the morning. Okay, so you went to school, then you went to college to be a teacher. Then, what type of teaching did you study? Were you
English. So English literature. I loved Shakespeare, novels, and I loved reading it, but I didn't think I could create it, which is really interesting to me. Just in the last few weeks, I've been carrying around a book. You would think it would be a sketchbook because I'm an artist, but it's actually a book to help me think through snippets of poems and characters and stuff like that. Because as I'm breaking down some of these limiting beliefs about, I can't be an artist, I can't draw. I'm also thinking, I used to think I can't write poetry. I only analyze poetry. And so I've been carrying around a sketchbook and writing little snippets of verse and stuff like that. So it's good. I mean, it's applied on multiple areas throughout my life. But go ahead.
Well, it's funny because I went through, I'm really drawn to your artwork, but I also really took note to the descriptions on your Instagram comments. And I brought it up in the point of, I think that this is something important for young artists to know too, is that when because you know the story behind the painting, doesn't you can't assume that everybody else knows it, and sometimes it's nice to let them tell you what the painting is about before you divulge it. But I noticed how eloquent all your descriptions were, and I thought, this woman has a book in her. And I didn't even know that's what your major was, or what you were teaching. That's so funny.
Well, you know what? In connection with that, I don't know if you're familiar with Donald Miller. He has this story branding company. He talks a lot about story. But he says, this is really interesting to me. He says that people will stop and look at a picture because of the visual, because of what it looks like. But oftentimes they buy because of the story or the words.
Right, right.
As I think through that, that's really changed the way I talk about my work.
Mm.
That I need to help them get into a space, a similar space that I am, or help them imagine that in their space. Just bring something to them besides just a picture.
Yes.
Really like
yeah.
that.
Yeah. And that goes to branding too. And another reason why I like to feature artists is because people will buy the person behind the brand. So if they like you and they like your story and they trust you, they'll be more apt to want to support you. I mean, it becomes a more personal connection to your product. It's not just this mass-produced thing. It's like, this is a real person that made this with a story, who has 3 children and a puppy.
Yes.
A big puppy. Well, I really love that. I noticed even things like you paint florals and you're like, sometimes the flowers don't always last. I'm like, that's so true. That's like such a basic thing. I'm always buying new flowers, but I could just buy a painting and I would have fresh flowers all the time.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I want to talk about, so when did you take a leap to go work as a full-time artist? Then you were working with your daughter and then you decided, I kind of like this thing, I think I'm going to pursue it. When was that moment for you?
Well, that summer after I had that aha moment, I just turned our dining room into an art space. So I put paint on the dining room table. My poor husband thought I was crazy. And I put paint and brushes and all kinds of pads of paper, just anything to help us create. And the children would just drift in and out and paint, and I would paint. And it was just a really wonderful thing, because I know you've probably noticed this with young artists you work with, but when people's hands are engaged, they are free and more willing to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And so great time of growth, I think, for our family. But anyway, that summer I started a small Instagram account. I mean, it was under my name. It wasn't private, but I didn't let my husband or anybody I knew follow me, because I didn't want Instagram to suggest it and for people to find out. I wanted to kind of learn in private as much as you could on social media. So I started connecting with artists, and I would ask them questions like, why does my cup in this drawing look like it's floating? Or why does this woman's face that I tried to make very feminine, why is it masculine? And I had so many wonderful artists who would, write a little paragraph about why I needed to change this, or what I need to think about, or values, or whatever. And it was a really nourishing thing as an artist to have the community around me. I found it to be a wonderful space on Instagram. And so I did that for a few years, and then I started, finally my husband, some people started finding out about it and they started following, whatever. Anyway, so a local designer who had a shop messaged me and said, hey, I like your work. Can I put some of it in my shop? And I thought, oh my goodness. It was a huge thing for me, because, I had not sold anything. And so anyway, I was really nervous. I had about 2 or 3 weeks to prepare for this meeting with her. And I had never done anything as far as like how to talk about sales tax or pricing or wholesale or, receipts or business cards, all this stuff. I felt like I had to do a crash course in 3 weeks and try to figure this out to meet with her. Although, it probably wouldn't have been a big deal if I didn't figure it all out, but I felt the pressure to do it, packaging my work and all that kind of stuff. So I worked pretty much day and night for 2 or 3 weeks, and I was exhausted. I got to this meeting and she had said, I won't be there till 12. So I thought, well, I'll just get there about 12:05 as she's getting in, and I'll just wait for her. It'll be fine. Well, when I got there, she was pulling out, and her shopkeeper was a little, short with me and said, "You should have been here earlier." And I just cried. I went back to
no.
work in the back of my car, and I just cried and cried and cried and cried. I went to where my husband was working, and he had my youngest child, and I just cried. I think a lot of it was exhaustion.
Yeah. All right.
So he said, "I don't want you to go home and just eat ice cream and feel sorry for yourself. I want you to go and end this day on a good note." So
Great advice. I love that.
It was very wise, because I would have gone home and just groveled and eaten ice cream and all that kind of stuff. So I had heard about a small gallery here in Greenville that carried the kind of work that I was interested in being a part of. I wanted to be a part of that particular field in terms of art. So I thought, well, I'll go over there, because I always thought that galleries were very relaxing, quiet, nourishing places. And I thought I'll be surrounded by all this beautiful stuff, and I'll feel better and all that kind of stuff. So I drove over to this little gallery called Art and Light Gallery. And what I didn't know was that it's actually a little house and a kind of a sketchy part of town. Now it's a little bit better than it was. And since it's kind of in a sketchy part of town, a lot of times the door would be locked, which meant that I had to talk to somebody. I didn't want to, because I had cried all my makeup off, and I just wanted to go in. So I had to ring the doorbell, and the owner came to the door, and she is a lovely, lovely person, also an artist. And she showed me around the gallery, and I just asked her, how do you work with artists? And she started asking me if I was an artist, and I still felt weird about even calling myself an artist, because I didn't think that I deserved that, And so I said, actually, I have a bunch of work in the car. And so she walked me to the car, and she looked at my work, and she said, call me in a few weeks and we're going to talk. And so I did that. And so it was like the most, it was a crazy day in that it seemed like it was going to end horribly. And then I was able to talk to her. And then I ended up selling it to that designer. And I ended up getting the meeting with the gallery and putting my work, and they represent me now. Mm-hmm. But it was just such an example to me of raising your hand. You got to ask for young artists if you want to be in a gallery. I probably wouldn't have taken my work there, but because I had it loaded already, I went there and showed it to her. And so that's how I think it was a big break in terms of, pushing me out of the nest, so to speak. I probably would still be hiding at home with some paintings if that hadn't happened. But that was how I first started having some eyeballs on my work.
That's such a really powerful story, because I've talked to artists who knocked on many gallery doors, but you walk in, do makeup off, hi, can I have my art? And it's like, we like you. It's like, that's just, and the fact that you had the impulse to go to that particular gallery too was also, probably calling you, that's interesting. That's a really interesting story. So I love that. Okay, let's talk about that, because I think that's the sweetest gallery. And I've noticed a couple of pictures that have been taken there. There's one of your magnolias that she styled so beautifully. And so she looks like the person that owns that gallery has several different artists there.
Yes.
And how long ago was that? And is that an ongoing thing for you?
Yes, my work is still there. They're very flexible with me. I send paintings when I'm able to get them done. Sometimes life gets really crazy. I have 3 children, as I think you've mentioned. And so sometimes it gets crazy, but they have been very flexible with me. And after I was there for about 9 months, I asked them if I could do a solo show.
Wow. Look at you, girl.
And again, I was naive. Since I didn't go to school and I had not done that before.
Best thing ever. Everyone don't go to school. No.
Well, I admire and envy those students that are in art school right now.
I'm kidding.
Wonderful education. But I asked if I could have a show there, and they were very gracious. And so that was the fall of last year. And it was the most difficult thing I think I've ever done. And I felt very exposed and vulnerable.
Really?
Yeah. If you have a whole room in a gallery with just your work, and you haven't been doing this all of your life, like a lot of artists have, then, at least I felt like everyone's going to know that I don't know what I'm doing. Everyone's going to know that I'm an imposter. And so,
Oh my gosh, we have to talk about this imposter syndrome.
oh
You're
yeah,
not, you know what you're doing. It's beautiful.
well, I cried a lot of tears, but again, it was perseverance.
Mm.
And there's a restaurant here in Greenville. If you ever come to Greenville, you have to visit down here in the Art District. It's called Golden Brown and Delicious. It's really a sweet little, just started a few years ago by actually one of my students from high school English. And I visited him as he was getting set up a few years ago. And I was just starting to make art, and he was just starting this little restaurant in a rough part of town. And I said, Alex, I don't remember you cooking. I don't remember you loving this. I thought you were in graphic design or something. And he said, well, I started cooking for family, and the self-doubt will always be there, but you have to listen to people around you. And to me, that was really powerful as a creator, that a lot of times we look at our work and we say it falls so far short of what we want to make. We have this vision in our head of this beautiful painting or whatever, and we want it to be better, but it is what it is. And if people tell you it's beautiful, at some point you have to set the self-doubt aside. And if they want to buy it, if they love it, you have to be willing to share it with them and offer.
Right.
So anyway, and also I was going to tell you for young artists, when I was getting ready to do the show, I had a hard time finding information about how to put on an art show that had been written in the last 10 years, maybe since social media.
Oh, we will do one on that.
And but I wrote an article that might be helpful, that
great.
I'd love for them to check out if anybody.
We will link to it. Absolutely.
Yes. But it was just some ideas, and it was also a record for me. Next time I do it, I'll go back and not reinvent the wheel. And so anyway, I was very grateful for that opportunity and experience. Even though it was really hard, it was really good. And so it was another instance of stepping out and just asking.
So did you feel like the show was successful?
I did. The show was up for a month, and then they kept some of the pieces for a couple more months. So I think I had 25 canvases total, and they gave me one of the small ones to take home. They said they didn't see a lot of interest in it, and it was one of my favorites. So it was kind of the ugly duckling that I loved because I created it, but everything else sold. So
wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I was very pleased with that and grateful, and yeah, it was really a wonderful experience. It was hard, definitely hard, but that's where rewarding experiences, come from, is experiences that are difficult or things that look too difficult, and you try them and you succeed, or sometimes you fail, but you learn a lot. If I hadn't built anything, I'd still have the experience of doing it. And that is, priceless.
Well, plus it really gave you a lot of motivation to create 25 pieces of work, which is huge. I mean, just in the process of creating that much of a body of work, you are growing so much as an artist. I mean, that's one of the things that I'll tell people when they're starting out. It's like, just do something every day, like even if it's for a half an hour, because you will be blown away by day 1 to day 50, and you'll have discovered who you are. It's just that you creating that much work was like a master's degree.
It was grueling, but you're right. You learned so much by going back and having that deadline. And I think that this year I've had fewer deadlines. So I feel like I've grown a little bit less than I did last year. So I need to create things like that for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And we as artists, a lot of times we have a little bit more flexibility. So we have to create those pressures.
The life of an entrepreneur. That's so true. You are the boss. I wanted to ask you about this lovely studio that you have, and it's really charming. Can you share a little bit about that, and how long have you been there?
Sure. I have only been here for about 6 months.
Oh,
okay. I moved out of my home, and my poor family, they're so patient, but I am not a super tidy painter. And so I would spill, or I'd put my palette down and the pup would run through it. And it was circus. And so at the beginning of, or the end of last year, I thought I just have to do something. We've got to change the situation. And so my husband didn't really use his office a lot. He could just work from anywhere when he needed to do office work. So I said, why don't we change your office into my studio? And he was very gracious and he said, that's fine. But I was talking to someone in my mastermind group that I'm a part of. And she said, well, there's a studio opening in downtown Greenville. Would you be interested? And I said, no, I don't think I would ever go. I will work from home. That's more convenient. So I got the phone and my husband said, what? You need to consider that. That is exactly what you've been looking for. And so I said, oh, okay. So I came and looked at it and it is a lot smaller than this vision I had in my head. And it was in rough shape. There was an artist moving out. So anytime you're moving, of course, it gets a little crazy. So when I saw it, I thought, oh, gracious. But the more I thought about being in a studio, it's an old boarding house actually in Greenville. There's a mill right down the road. So I imagine that the teachers that taught the mill children boarded here. Each room has a little tiny coal burning fireplace. And there are about 6 other artists who work in here. And the more I thought about being in community and close community with these other artists and rubbing shoulders with them and also just having a separate space to create, I was really excited by that. And so I signed the lease and got in here on Valentine's Day of this year. And it has been such a wonderful experience just creating the space. I wanted somewhere to do office work and to create and also to receive guests or designers or clients or whomever. And so I tried to create all of those things in 200 square feet, which was a challenge. But I love it. It's still in a rough part of town, a little rough, but it's good. I'm very, very grateful. I'd say that it's been a good step to make me feel more legitimate as an artist. Also to help me learn from different types of artists. The artist across the hall is an oil painter, a very traditional oil painter. And so she'll come over and give feedback on my work. And I really, really appreciate that. And I get to learn from her, looking at her work as well. So it's been really great. Stepping out has been scary, but good.
Do you feel like everybody I know that has done this? There's been a couple of interviews where I've talked to different artists, and they took that leap, leaving the house and getting a little space to create in, and they were like, "Gosh, I am so much more productive. It's like a job to me." So, do you feel like it's been more productive for you?
I do. I feel like when the first week or two driving here, I was almost in tears every time I came. So many people live their whole lives and they work jobs that they don't love. And so to be able to drive to work and come to the studio and do something that I really love, it's a huge gift, and I'm so grateful. And even and I'm starting a lot later than a lot of people. And I think that makes me more grateful because anyway, but I am, I think, more productive because the house stays at the house. And when I'm here, it's a creative time. And so, yes, I would totally recommend it, even though it is scary. I mean, there are artists that are a lot more advanced than I am, and they see my work, and sometimes that's a little scary to paint in front of them, but it's great, especially, since I didn't have the formal training, to have somebody come in and say, oh, think about your values, or, all this kind of just feedback on framing or whatever. It's really good.
Yeah. Wow. It sounds magical, actually. And it's really charming. And you did write a really sweet post on it. So I'll definitely put a link to it here in the show notes so people can see the before and after, because it's really, really cute. I mean, you have a career in interior design too, if you want. It's really sweet. I wanted to just really briefly, we've been going, I don't want to go too long, but we talked a little bit about a Mastermind, and maybe you could just share with some people what that is and how it works and how it's been helpful for you.
Sure.
Like, how did that come about? How did you find the people to do this with?
Well, I follow Emily Jeffords. You might be familiar with her work. She's an artist in Greenville, and I was looking at her Instagram last summer, and she announced that she was do a mastermind group, and I had heard of these groups, and it's basically where people, sometimes they're in different fields. So maybe entrepreneurs would get together and talk about entrepreneurship, or artists or whatever. She announced that she was going to have one dealing with art, creating a business that's sustainable in art. And I thought, and she was going to only pick 24 people. And, she has 70,000, 80,000 followers on Instagram. And so I thought, well, you know what? I'll apply. It won't hurt to apply. I don't even have to do it if I decide that I don't want to do it. So I had to apply. I had to fill out a questionnaire about my work and myself. She had certain minimum sales numbers for each month. I barely met the minimum. And I thought, this is crazy, but who cares? I'll just try it. And so I got an email a few months later, or I guess it was about a month or two later, that said I was in. And I thought, oh my goodness, wow. And so it's a group of 24 artists that are from all over. There's one in China, one in Australia. There's one from Alaska. They're from all over the place. And we meet once a month on Zoom, and we talk about, sometimes it's very specific, maybe talk about email lists or Instagram, but sometimes it's just free flowing, and we talk about what's going on and what we're learning. We also have a Facebook page, and then we're getting ready for our retreat coming up in a few weeks. It's the finale of the year of being together. So I've just been so nourished by that. I've made a lot of connections with other artists. We've learned so much about all different kinds of things. And it's been really rewarding. So I would highly recommend finding a mastermind group, maybe online through artists that you enjoy, or even creating one yourself, connecting with some artists that maybe are at a similar level, and see if they would like to get together. Because what I found is that artists are so hungry to connect.
Yes.
And on Instagram, we look like we're all perfect and we're just floating through this beautiful life where we're, creating beautiful things. But we really want the connection. In fact, I was talking to an artist who's been painting for, 60 years or something. And he has been creating, and he's amazing, but he's never really sold online. So he's peppering me with questions that I'm just starting. And we were at a party together, and we talked and talked and talked. And what I found, like I just said, is that we all need that connection, and we all have things we need to learn from each other, whether we've been creating for decades or we're just starting out our careers. That connection is so beautiful, and it influences our work and makes it richer. So I've been thankful for that. And I also thank you, Mari, for what you do in connecting artists and promoting other artists through your platform. I think that is such a beautiful thing. That I love that Instagram seems like a very positive place for artists. And I've
noticed that. Yeah. It's funny. I've been vetted by your mastermind group. I don't know who was it in it. It's like, oh yeah, I talked to Gina. She's in my mastermind group. She said you're okay.
Exactly. No, we do ask because you get, I'm sure you get gamers as well. People that want to buy something, but they want to deliver it or pick it up in a weird way. And so, it's just good to have that base of people.
Yeah, no, I think masterminds are fabulous. I've participated in them before, and I think that they're again, like you said, it's just really nice to have that connection with other artists. And that's what's been really, I feel so fortunate doing this with the podcast. And I feel like everybody I interview gets to be like my friend. And so it's just really fun because all these different artists are just so amazing and so talented. And like just everybody's got such an interesting and different story. It's just great. It's really great. Well, anyway, okay, that's super helpful and really fun. And thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, so now I always like to ask my ending two questions are, what was the best business advice that was ever given to you? And it doesn't necessarily have to mean with your art, but if it does apply to your art, that would be helpful.
Well, one thing that I think about pretty much every day when I'm in here in the studio, and especially when I'm discouraged, the days where the painting is not going as I would like it to go, it's that Andy Warhol quotation, and I wrote it down here so I could remember, don't think about making art, just get it done. Let everyone else decide if it's good or bad, whether they hate it or love it. While they're deciding, make even more art. And I feel like my tendency, I don't know if it's artists in general or just me, I tend to self-criticize as I'm creating, and to pass judgment on the work. And so I love that encouragement to just create. Let other people pass judgment. Let them decide whether it's good or bad. Just create and keep creating. And not every piece is going to be awesome. But if you create enough, you're going to create some awesome work. So that fuels me a lot.
I love that. I love that a lot. That's great. And then what would be your advice to your younger self?
Oh, gracious. I feel like I could write a book to my younger self so many times.
Maybe you should. I'm telling you, the way you write, you really should write a book. Art and your writing would be really lovely.
I think that I would say, and I'm not sure if someone said this, I know I've heard Gretchen Rubin say this, so I don't know where it came from originally, but live in an atmosphere of growth. So in other words, I know that when I was in my 20s, I felt like I had to have it all figured out, that I need to go ahead and start life and start succeeding and all this kind of stuff from the beginning, and not being willing to admit that I didn't know things and be willing to learn and fail and try things. And so I feel like I tell my children, and I would tell myself as a younger person, to be humble, be willing to learn, and be okay with if success doesn't come overnight. Life is long. And there's a lot you can learn that you may not know now, and it's okay to fail. Emily Jeffords, who started this mastermind group, her studio is right below mine. And
wow.
But she often says progress is quiet and slow. And that's so good, I think, in our modern culture, because we want everything to happen now. We want all the likes on our posts to come immediately. We want our paintings or whatever to sell out immediately. And we want to make great things immediately, instead of realizing that it's okay for a painting to take a while. It's okay for our skills to not be all perfect. Growth is beautiful, and it does take time. And so I would say to any student, be willing to hear the critiques and change. Maybe your teacher said you're really good at such and such and you don't feel good at it. That's okay. Go ahead and try. Be willing to fail. Take your time and pursue some of those things that may not seem like they're natural for you at this point. So live in an atmosphere of growth. And I feel like even now I try to do that, because there's so much that I don't know.
I really love that. Both of those is just excellent advice. And it's funny. It's like, it's always very different what everybody has to say, what they share. And I really love that, like on a personal level, because I've been working on more bigger paintings that take a lot of time. And instead of usually, people are used to me doing like a watercolor every day, and I haven't been doing that. So I kind of feel like, oh gosh, I should be posting every day. Like you get caught up in that like stress of that, when I'm just so super happy creating. So that should really be all that matters.
Yeah, exactly. It should be. And we love that pressure of posting every day.
But now nobody sees it anyway, so I don't have that pressure as much.
But don't you feel like when you do that, it kind of squeezes the creativity out of you, when you're
right.
feeling that pressure instead of just feeling the freedom to create. So yeah, I would encourage people just to post and share, but be okay with people not responding right away. Or, maybe it's a few days between paintings. That's okay too. We need that creative time to just drink in the beautiful things around us instead of always be pouring out.
Right. And I don't know if that's just a limiting belief, going back to that in my own mind, that I feel like, oh my God, I've got to do this. I've got to post something. Or if it's just, or if that's not true at all. Like, it's okay if you just don't post. Like there's some artists that I follow that I like drink up everything that they post. And there's one in particular, and he doesn't hardly post that much at all. But then when he does, I'm so excited to see what he's posting, So
like if you're consistent, but not, even if you don't post like every day, the algorithm seems to be okay with that, at least.
Yeah.
Seeing even bigger artists do that and seem to do fine. So
Yeah. Oh gosh, well, this was so lovely and such a treat, and you're just as fabulous as I knew you would be, and your artwork is gorgeous. Gorgeous. And I don't care how you learned and what path you went on to get there, but you got there. Because it's
maybe.
well, I mean, that's always true. I remember having a ballet teacher when I was younger, and they're like, "You'll never perfect this." And it's true. It's like, that's why ballet dancers stand at the bar and do the same repetitive moves every single class before class. You can't perfect it. You just are always working on it. And it's true with any art form. It's a work in progress.
I want to thank you again. You have been encouraging me and supporting me. I think back around my show, I connected with you, and you have just been so beautiful and gracious, and I just really appreciate it. So I wanted to say thank you publicly.
Oh, made me get a little teary-eyed. Well, thank you again, and I'm so excited to feature you for August. So I will be in touch with you. Yay!
Thank you, Mari. Have a good, what is this, Tuesday? Wednesday?
A good Tuesday, I know. It's a big blur. The weeks just blur together. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you like this podcast and you'd like to support it even more, you can join me over on patreon.com/Mari Robeson and become a patron of mine. If you're a patron of mine, you'll receive bonus episodes every month, only for patrons. You'll also receive 20% off all the merchandise in my online shop, marirobeson.bigcartel, and you will be receiving free printables every month that will be of my artwork, and they're some really fun things. You can follow along on Instagram and you can see what I'm creating just for my patrons. I would deeply appreciate it. It would help me keep the lights on, and it would help me pay all the fees that it takes to put together a podcast like this so that I can keep supporting all the artists, keep bringing you great information, keep paying it forward to the next generation of artists. It's just a wonderful thing, and I would really deeply appreciate your support.